The Declaration of Independence is only about 1,320 words long. Despite its short length, it continues to inspire people today. The Declaration of Independence is one of the most famous documents in American history. The Second Continental Congress adopted it on July 4th. Americans still celebrate their independence on the 4th of July over 200 years later. It's a short document, and it may be hard to imagine such an old text is still relevant today. However, its impact has echoed across American history, resounding in the cries of people who have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. The Declaration of Independence was the first document of its kind. Its primary writer was Thomas Jefferson. Along with listing complaints against the British government, he emphasized that people could choose their government and had the right to change it to improve their lives. That idea still impacts our world today, giving us a glimpse into the Declaration of Independence's importance. Who was Thomas Jefferson? Thomas Jefferson was one of the United States' founding fathers, but his life was more complicated than only being a famous politician. Despite common opinions, Jefferson had a rough time growing up, especially as a teenager and young adult. His father died when he was 14, leaving him with a domineering mother. When he went to college, he spent his first year partying, which drained his finances. Despite that, he earned an education as a lawyer and practiced law for several years. In 1765, the British Parliament passed the Stamp Act. It placed a tax on paper in the United States. Every paper product, like books and newspapers, had to have a stamp on them, which limited access to these materials because not everyone could afford to pay for the stamp. Jefferson turned his attention towards helping his fellow colonists, gaining their freedom by using his legal education. He joined the Second Continental Congress and was the lead writer of the Declaration of Independence. In 1779, he went on to become the governor of Virginia. Jefferson had no talent as a military leader, so when the Revolution came to Virginia, he couldn't stop the British attack on Richmond. After the war, Thomas Jefferson had more opportunities to help his new country, such as serving as the Minister to France, Secretary of State, and Vice President. During this time, Jefferson argued with Hamilton about having a national bank. The two men clashed over political ideas. The tension between these two eventually became part of the formation of political parties. George Washington was firmly against political parties. This did not stop the other founding fathers. James Madison and Thomas Jefferson formed the Democratic-Republican Party. It supported strong state governments. John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, and John Jay formed the Federalist Party. It favored a strong national government. They did not play a part in Washington's elections, but starting in 1796, political parties became influential during the presidential races. Political parties are still part of American politics. The groups have changed names and stances many times over the years, but the tension has been present since 1796. In 1801, Thomas Jefferson became America's third president. He oversaw the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, dramatically expanding the country's boundaries. The Lewis and Clark expedition occurred during his presidency, but there were also political conspiracies and issues with trade. He was president for 2 terms before returning to his plantation, Monticello. After retiring, he was active in other ways. He was a founder of the University of Virginia and worked carefully in his garden. Jefferson died on July 4, 1826, 50 years after the Second Continental Congress ratified the Declaration of Independence. Although Thomas Jefferson was famous for fighting for America's freedom, he had contradictory views about slavery. He believed every enslaved person had the right to ask for their freedom, which his contemporaries in Virginia thought was more revolutionary than they were willing to go. However, Thomas Jefferson also kept enslaved people on his plantation, believing that immediately freeing everyone would divide the northern and southern colonies, leaving the South in deep financial trouble. Although he did have a plan for gradual emancipation, his conflicting views continue to confuse people today, reminding us Thomas Jefferson was human. How did he get involved with the Declaration of Independence? For years, tensions grew between Great Britain and the American colonies. The French and Indian War taught the colonists how to fight. They also actively participated in the Enlightenment. a time filled with new ideas concerning the value of individuals and the proper role of government. After the French and Indian War, Britain attempted to raise taxes and resecure their hold on the American colonies. But the colonists resented the taxation and the pressure to comply. This tension boiled over at the Battle of Lexington and Concord in 1775. Even though historians consider this the first battle of the American Revolution, it was not immediately apparent to some colonists. They still hoped for reunification with Britain. It was only when King George III and Parliament refused to listen to their concerns did the colonists begin turning to independence and staging a revolution. One of the influential people during this shift was Thomas Jefferson. Because Jefferson had trained as a lawyer, he was well-spoken and eloquent. His training is probably part of the reason Jefferson became a delegate at the Second Continental Congress in 1775, and he represented Virginia alongside people like George Mason and James Madison. It was Jefferson's first time as a delegate, but it was certainly not his last role in the American Revolution. In 1776, Jefferson became part of a small committee called the Committee of Five that decided to write the Declaration of Independence, taking their lead from a resolution passed by North Carolina called the Lee Resolution and the Virginia Constitution. Both called for the colonists to band together and declare independence from Britain. The Virginia Constitution was particularly influential. George Mason wrote it in May 1776. Mason was part of the Virginia upper class and owned land. He and Jefferson frequently corresponded about topics ranging from tobacco crops to plans for the upcoming revolution. The Virginia delegates wrote the Virginia Constitution, but Mason's version was harsh and sarcastic. His fellow legislators subdued some of it, but it was still not eloquent. Jefferson took many ideas from the Virginia Constitution and reshaped them for the Declaration of Independence, which he wrote just 1 month later on June 12th and 13th in his Philadelphia boarding house. Although the entire committee helped write this document, Thomas Jefferson wrote the first iteration, so many of his ideas flowed throughout it. This assignment was not his first time writing about political or philosophical ideas. He had written several pieces in the past few years about natural rights and the proper role of government, including Summary View of the Rights of British North America. One of the most famous parts of the Declaration of Independence is the preamble, which includes the ideas that people have certain rights and the government should come from the people. These ideas were popular during the Enlightenment, but the Declaration of Independence was not a philosophical treatise. Jefferson did not discover new concepts. Most of his ideas came from other philosophers, like John Locke. Instead, the Declaration of Independence was unique because it took the ideas of the Enlightenment and put them into practice. Most of the document lists the colonists' problems with British rule, including unfair taxation and violation of the social contract. The social contract theory was a popular idea during the Enlightenment. It states that when people form a society, they agree to certain morals and practices so society can function. People give up some of their freedom for the government's protection, so if the government ceases to protect them, the people have the right to get rid of it. While this theory is not as popular today, it was prevalent when Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. After listing all the colonists' issues with the British government, they declared their right to revolt. The Declaration of Independence underwent several revisions with the Committee of Five and the Second Continental Congress. Jefferson didn't agree with all the changes they made, such as removing language the British might find offensive. However, Jefferson is still remembered today for his work on this foundational piece of American history. Why was the Declaration of Independence important? After the Committee of Five was satisfied with their edits, they gave it to the Second Continental Congress. Only New York abstained from declaring independence, and Congress ratified the document. Although most of the Second Continental Congress favored the Declaration of Independence, not all of the American colonists shared their sentiments. Some remained neutral, and some remained loyal to Britain. These loyalists had many different reasons for not wanting to leave Britain. Some were afraid of the British Army, and others thought the colonists and British could still reach a peaceful arrangement. The Declaration of Independence was an essential step for the American colonies despite the internal disagreements. People who had been uncertain about joining the revolution now entered the war efforts, increasing the number of available soldiers. They were also free to make international alliances for the upcoming war, now that they could start their own country. They were able to solicit France's help after the Battle of Saratoga, and their alliance would prove essential to America's victory. The reaction in Great Britain to the Declaration of Independence was also split. Most of the upper class thought the British Army would quickly subdue the American colonists. At the time, the British Army was one of the best in the world. It was hard to imagine their great soldiers losing to people without the same military training. So the idea of the American Revolution succeeding seemed preposterous. Many did not believe the Americans truly meant revolution. Most colonists had come from Britain, so they thought they could still settle any concerns without war. However, some worried the recent policy changes impacting taxes and trade had forced the colonies to rebel, even likening the situation to the Roman Empire under a dictator. King George III was not one of the few who saw the political ramifications of his recent loss. He needed the American colonies to maintain the British economy. Britain was still in financial trouble after its recent wars, like the French and Indian War. Losing the colonies would hurt Britain's economic recovery. King George was also proud and saw the Declaration of Independence as an insult. This directly led to the American Revolution. Several British writers sided with the king and attacked the Declaration of Independence. They criticized specific phrases out of context, suggested the American colonists were uneducated, and purposefully misinterpreted the work to skew British opinion against the colonies. However, the Declaration of Independence was important long after the American Revolution was over. It gave the world a model for self-government, balanced with the rights of individuals. It's a tricky balance to find. People across the globe have been fighting for it for hundreds of years, basing their own documents on the Declaration of Independence. The ideas of freedom and equality continue to be debated in American politics, showing the Declaration of Independence remains important today. Abroad, the American Revolution, with its revolutionary belief that people should govern themselves, helped inspire the French Revolution soon afterward. Later on, people in South America used it to start their revolutions against Spanish colonialism. Jefferson might not have known it, but his document did more than free the American colonists from Britain. It became the rallying cry of oppressed people ever since, as they too realized they had the right to govern themselves and have life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How would you like to get a deeper understanding of history, impress your friends, and predict the future more accurately based on past events? If this sounds like something you might be into, then check out the brand new Captivating History Book Club by clicking the first link in the description. To learn more about Thomas Jefferson, check out our book, Thomas Jefferson, A Captivating Guide to an American Founding Father who was the principal author of the Declaration of Independence and the third President of the United States. It's available as an ebook, paperback, and audiobook. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more videos like this.